Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Your host, Thomas Keenan. I've got Parker Olson with us today. And when you get, I don't know, it's 50 plus podcasts in the bank, all the podcast booking agencies start hitting you with random crap. And to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, I pretty much just ignore them. And for some reason, this one came through a couple weeks ago and it caught my eye. And the thing that caught my eye the most was seeing that you were living in a tent in a van for a number, like 2 years of your life, and you were doing some pretty cool things. You're into marketing, you're into business, you're an entrepreneur. You seem hard driven, like in a good way. And I said, you know what? Let's roll the dice and see if we can make something happen here. And here we are today, a nice sunny day here in Dallas. You're up in Seattle. It's probably cloudy and rainy. No offense.
It's gorgeous up here today, man.
Yeah, that's cool, man. But no, seriously, welcome to the show. I want to hear about your journey. I want to hear about you living in a van in a tent for a couple of years and what's transpired and all the different businesses you got going on and things you're doing to help your clients.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's a lot to cover there. And yes, I did. I lived out of a tent for 2 years. I lived out of a vintage 1995 Japanese import van. So like the wheels on the other side of the road, you hit a button and like the roof comes up and it's like a canvas tent. I lived out of that for a year and primarily in grocery store parking lots. It was all about building kind of this food business that I'm currently working on. But a lot of people ask me why, and like, I don't know, some people think it's just sort of like sadistic or, kind of strange to want to go do those things. I think, when I try and put the finger on it, I actually go back to like childhood and, I'm not going to get all psychological on you here, but growing up, I was always compared to my brother and I always was, like Kyle's younger brother. And I think that like has instilled this sort of like sense of like wanting to do things differently. And I feel like, for most of my life, like I really enjoy sort of paving my own path, trying different experiences. Mm-hmm. And so, that is just some sort of context, but why did I move into a tent? Like, why is that relevant? So this was back in 2018. So I started working on this food concept. A little bit about that. I got into that because I was working in management consulting and just felt sort of caged. And in order to, feel uncaged, I wanted to do something that was autonomous or something that I could do for myself. And I decided I'd go vegan for 30 days. I don't know. I eat meat, for the record.
Right.
And I did that. And I ended up doing 18 months of trying different nutritional regimens. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of that, on top of nutritional regimens, I was doing sort of lifestyle changes. And one of them was like, I'm going to live outside in a tent for a month. We'll just try it out. And anyways, it was fun. It was actually the rainiest recorded August over the past 25 years in Seattle, which was brutal. And so the tent collapsed on me twice in that month.
Yeah.
Anyways, the takeaways from that 18-month experiment, though, is ultimately what informed me to start my food business. So came out of that and I was really compelled by sort of these mushroom supplements that I had supplemented with for a month. My background's in neuroscience and I dove really heavy into the research and sort of became, convinced that like, hey, there's some mushrooms out there that, by supplementing with them, you can address sort of like really interesting health concerns. So like some mushrooms, can address like mental health, right. And sort of help in a natural way. Some mushrooms are used as cancer treatments across the world. Yeah. So I became compelled.
Are you talking more along the lines of like mushrooms as a supplement or mushrooms as like a psychedelic?
Good question. Most people ask about this. So when I think of, most people think about mushrooms black and white is often what I hear. It's like mushrooms that can kill you, mushrooms that get you high, and then mushrooms that you can eat. Mm-hmm. The reality is mushrooms are on like this spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, you have edible mushrooms. You have like a brown button mushroom, a cremini mushroom, right? A portobello mushroom. Way on the other end of the spectrum, you have mushrooms that are lethal. You'll eat and you'll die. Kind of further in from where you'll eat and you'll die are kind of these psychedelics. Then you have more of these like medicinal mushrooms that are separate from psychedelics, totally legal, have been used medicinally for thousands of years to address different pain or sort of, as a remedy. And then you go all the way into sort of edible mushrooms. But like, for example, shiitake mushrooms, which most people just eat like normal mushrooms, are shown to have medicinal compounds. Mm-hmm. So anti-inflammatory medicinal compounds within them. So like eating them, like you're getting these anti-inflammatory benefits. So anyways, the mushrooms are really interesting. We don't have to super deep dive on mushrooms, but I became super convinced. I joined the board of the largest mycological society in the US. I got into mushroom foraging. And I'm like, okay, cool. I want to get these into people's diets. Everybody thinks mushrooms are super gross, weird. They're very taboo. And so I decided I would sneak them into different food formats in like a powdered or an extract form. So I start making a granola or an oatmeal. And then, I'm making it, I'm selling it to local spots, I'm selling it online. And then I'm like, wait, okay, I have to order, a 50-pound bag of oats, and I have to store this physical good somewhere, and I'm not going to pay for a space. So I was like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to move into my backyard where I was sleeping in the tent previously, because I did that for a month. It was fine. And then I'll get rid of my bed, and I'll have some storage racks, and I'll store product, and then I'll build a desk, and that'll be like the office. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I never thought about the exit strategy, right? I didn't know where I was going to go from there. I just did it. I was like, I need storage space. This is a solution. I don't mind moving outside. That would be kind of fun. I saw it as a cool opportunity. So I moved into the backyard, and I was outside for 2 years.
Wow, dude.
So yeah, it wasn't the best of my dating scene, on my dating life.
How do you explain that one? It's like, yeah, hey, you want to come back home with me? Cool. We're going to be outside in the yard.
Literally, yeah. It was sort of this like when do I tell them about the tent? Mm-hmm. I will say I built it up. It was super nice in there. I had like a canopy around it, and I was living well. But towards the end of that 2 years, COVID kind of hit. So we're starting to sell this bag granola in grocery stores, and we get access to working with a distributor to distribute our product in distribution centers and grocery stores on the East Coast and the Midwest and in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't reach anybody by email. This is COVID. This was early 2021. And so I said, screw it. Like, I'm going to raise some money, and we're going to buy like a cheap pop-up camper van, and I'm going to drive to these places and go to these grocery stores and like go to these headquarters of these grocery chains and convince people to put our product on shelves, and then go to the stores and like sample the product and sell the product to the people.
Yeah. And
so, I didn't really, I shouldn't say I didn't think about it. I just like didn't consider all that would be totally included. So yeah, I hit the road. I bought this Japanese import and hit the road back. That must have been like June, July of 2021, and then got back like June, July of 2022.
That's wild, dude. So I got a couple of takeaways from there. And the biggest one that pops off is like, how bad do you want it, and how far are you willing to go to make it a reality? Right. And for you, it was to the extreme. And look, your version of extreme versus somebody else's extreme are two different things. From my perspective, like you being willing to sleep outside in the tent so you have room to store your supplies in the room, that's extreme as all hell. But you know what? That's what you had to do in order to make things a reality for you. Yep. So what's been the positive upside of you sacrificing we'll call it a modern bedroom, right? And what have been the upsides that from you sacrificing these things? How has it positively impacted your company at this point?
Yeah, and I'll touch on that absolutely. But I feel like something I've heard you talk about on the show is like the 3 Gs, right? And I feel like for me, like get things done is like very in nature of me. It's like, okay, I don't care like what I'm gonna have to do, like it'll just get done. Like, yeah. So I think for me, like that was always part of my mentality, especially starting the business and understanding, hey, 9,900 of food businesses typically die out of 10,000 food businesses within 3 years, right? I have to do whatever it takes to sort of try and get there. Yep. For me, I think the value that brought, specifically on the tent. So, it definitely brought some awareness. So I started getting more active on LinkedIn and like talking about it, and people were like, who is this kid? It showed, before people invested dollars, when I was like, hey, I've been living in my tent for 2 years to try and make this happen, people were like, oh, like it sort of creates some instant credibility of being like, when you're investing in such an early stage company, a lot of it is like, do you believe? And it's like, damn, if someone's willing to fucking live in the tent for 2 years, like that's pretty intense. Like what wouldn't they be willing to do?
Right.
So that was super valuable. And then we created some of our most valuable like advertising content out of me living in the tent. So like there's still this one ad that has generated like it has had the largest ROI of any marketing effort we've ever done. And it's literally, I just got fed up one day and I recorded myself and it's me like coming out of the tent and I'm like, hey, like, I've been living out of a tent for a year to make the healthiest granola on the market. And then it like flips to me in the tent. Like I'm like sleeping. It's like dark out and I'm like talking through the product. And I'll have to maybe I'll send you that link to like, it's so funny. I got
Yeah.
some hilarious commentary on that. So that was a significant value.
Yeah.
And actually that advertisement is what the large distributor saw, who was like, hey, we'll put you in these distribution centers. Like, we think your story is really awesome. We tried the product. It's great. So it was sort of kickstarted some of the business, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. It's like the content you put together that you didn't necessarily think was going to be the most inspiring content was the most inspiring content. And even on like a micro scale, on the normal social media channels, I've seen that too. It's like, you start posting away and you want to get some engagement. You're trying to build a following. And one day you wake up and your brain is just on fire. And it's like, oh my God, I have the most epic lesson I'm going to go teach the socials today. And you pour your heart and soul and you write this long-winded Facebook post and you hit the send button. You're like, bro, that just killed the internet.
Yeah.
I'm going to break the internet today. And 3 hours later, you got like 13 likes on the fucker.
Yeah.
And the day you go and you take a picture of your dog who's laying on her back and, got her ass in the air, and you got 465 engagements on that post, which means
totally.
Nothing. Right? It's just funny how it works, man. But you got the most engaging content probably when you least expected it.
Totally. To your point, and honestly, I've heard you talk about this on the show before too, and it like super resonates with me. Like, I hate spending a lot of time on like content or things that like may instantly not work, because like you just never know. I think it's like you just have to throw a lot of shit at the wall and see what sticks and see what doesn't, and like continue to move and iterate. And just like, I get really bogged down by being like, let's make the strategic roadmap for the next 2.5 years, when I know that it's going to be bullshit in fucking 20 days. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that is the challenge between moving from founder to like CEO, is like getting through that, of like, how do you get from getting the stuff done to like being able to effectively strategically plan, but also not being bogged down by it, by, and like sort of seamlessly doing both of those. I think really good like CEOs are good at that, versus founders are just really good at like getting stuff done.
Yeah, I think there's truly a point where you have to start doing that strategic planning. But there's also that beginning, that launch, that startup phase where, hey man, like we may have to pivot quickly tomorrow because we don't know what the next thing that's going to get thrown at us is. So we can spend all this time over here planning. We can spend all this time over here building out back-end automations and systems, and cool. You get hit from left field with something and you got to do that 180 pivot, and all of a sudden all that work you just spent 3, 6, 9 months on just goes out the window. So yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a period of time, especially in the startup phase, where it's like, hey, no, we're just going to go in and we're going to grind and we're going to work each and every day and we're going to make shit happen.
Yeah. It's delicate, right? I think transitioning is, and I feel like even within the last 6 months, like, I've been working on some other projects and building some other things, and all of that has come out of like being, really thoughtful of being like, okay, like what's working? Like let's document what's working. And then how are we delegating that out? And like, oh, okay, that was really cool. Like this like thing that's working exists in its own entity now.
Yeah.
And so, I've been starting to kind of get to that point, but I must say, like, I think for me, where I am in my career, like, I don't want to be a CEO. And sometimes I hear people and they're like, oh my God, like you're your own CEO, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would love to be a CEO. And I'm like, I don't know if you would, and I don't want to be a CEO, and I'm not a CEO. Okay. Like when, we get to that point, I would probably hire a CEO, and I wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. But you know what, man, I like that. I think you have the foresight and you also have the understanding and you have the ability to say comfortably, which goes against what society would consider, the norm or okay. You were okay saying, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's not me. That's awesome. The fact that you're aware of that now is basically going to set you up for success in the future better, in my opinion. And the fact that you're willing to bring somebody in at a very high level to help run a company or one of your companies, dude, have at it. Have at it.
I don't know. And, I'd be curious to hear your take. Like, and I think a lot of people who aren't in the entrepreneurship world, but are, curious about it, like it's hard to wrap your mind around the differences between a 0 to 1 million company, a 1 to 10 million company, and a 10 to 100 and 100 plus. Like the day-to-day activities and like the infrastructure required is drastically different across all of those schemes. And I think for me, it's like, I think I really, really like the 0 to 1. I like the 1 to 10, but I think the 10 to 100 just isn't, it's not what I want to be doing. I don't want to show up every day and do the exact same thing every day and like have like the full blown structure, which to me is sort of what starts to happen there.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you. I have no interest in that larger number, right? I've got plenty of experience going from 0 to $1 million, and I've got a bunch of experience going from low 7 figures into, we'll call it 15 mil a year, right? I've operated in those areas, and I'm fine with that. And even at a $10 million a year company with a team size of roughly 20, 25 people, it was chaotic enough for me to say, I don't know if I want that in my own life too. And I think there's this, we all look on the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the socials, and we see this lifestyle, and we're like, oh, we got to have $100 million a year company. Unless you've unless you've actually been inside of a company that's generating millions of dollars a year and you're sitting at a very high level in that company, you have no idea what you're asking for.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people need to have a very frank conversation with themselves and figure out, okay, how much do I really want? How much do I really need to live a comfortable lifestyle that I am going to be okay with? Fuck what society says.
Yeah.
Right. And the older that I get, the more I realize it's not as much money as I thought it was when I was younger.
Believe that, dude. I felt really blessed. I connected with some people earlier this year who are in their like mid 40s, like develop businesses, and it's sort of like a mastermind group. It's not a mastermind group, but I feel like that's sort of what people are branding those things as now. And we went through a really cool exercise, and it was through recommendation of one of these guys. And he's like, I think you should really sit down and like really understand like what is like the financial target of the annual, per year that like you would really find joy from, and like anything over that, like you shouldn't even think about. Like how do you get to that point? And then like you don't necessarily want to go further. And I think the takeaway for me was like, I think what everybody's taught growing up, and I think what a lot of people my age like are looking at is like, oh, how can I just be like as rich as possible, or how can I get rich? And it's like, I no longer want to be rich, however that's defined. I feel pretty comfortable or confident being like, where do I want to be? And like, what could I do to get there versus like, oh, I want to make $100 million a year. I would never want to make $100 million a year. Never. No. What's required for that is nothing I'm interested in. So
yeah, I agree with you.
I look at stuff like that. Are you willing to share? Like do you have a goal or and if not, it's totally cool.
So, I've had to recoup and do some things lately in the past year and a half or so. And I need to sit back down and dial in that number.
Really do it.
But here's what I have figured out, right? The company right now, which is my main squeeze, which is Step It Up Academy, which is my coaching mastermind program. This company needs to kick out enough what I call them coins, tokens, that allows me to obviously pay all the expenses, take care of my team, make some money, but also stack those coins so it allows me to invest further.
Into Step It Up or into other
things, right? So they could be passive investments, could be real estate, could be also going in and purchasing other service-based businesses and basically going in, okay, cool. This business here is doing, let's call it $700,000 a year. Let's go roll out some of the infrastructure systems and processes that I know for a fact work because I've used them already in other companies. Let's roll these out. Let's get this company at $3 million and either set that sucker on autopilot with the right team where I do a minimal or sell it. Right. Yeah. That's the play for me. So like, I don't want the $100 million a year company. I'll take a couple of companies that are doing $1 million a year.
Sure.
Optimize the shit out of them and keep the stress levels much lower.
Yeah. To me, I feel like I'm pretty aligned with that thinking. And also, on the side, like just starting to build sort of an agency model with another founder. We've hired about 10 to 12 full-time remote employees, and we're paying them like super well, and they do great work. And then we've built in some kind of tech infrastructure using some AI and some scraping capabilities. But like, dude, we don't know how to like fucking manage it. Like I'm like kind of like trying to read about it, and like I know how to manage my own business, so I'm using similar principles, but it's kind of a different ball game. So maybe a conversation for another time.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive in for a second here. You got FORIJ, which is the food company, right? What else you got going on? What keeps you busy every day?
Man, what doesn't keep me busy every day? It's also I like how you say that sometimes when I chat with people and they ask me what I do, and I tell them like, oh, I've got this business and I'm working on this other thing. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, it honestly just keeps me busy every day. It's something to do. Like I need to be busy or I get anxious. Like I need to be doing things. So yeah, I'm working on FORIJ, pretty primarily. And then sort of from FORIJ, have been doing some growth operator work with a couple like distressed brands in a portfolio, and kind of through that work and through FORIJ are building sort of this agency model. So we've determined, we basically figured out some ways to create what we call like marketing growth engines or different marketing capabilities that we can do really, really well for pretty low cost and people are willing to pay for. So like one of them, for example, is like influencer marketing, super popular. And we've built, through sort of using some AI and some scraping, and then also some manual labor as well, and some manual help. It's like we can reach up to like 200, 250 influencers a day from a brand. And all we're doing is seeding product. And we have somebody who's reaching out to targeted influencers, depending on whatever niche you're in. And we're able to actually generate all of those influencers based off of view count on all their different videos around different topics, different keywords. And then we have sort of some automated tools that help with sort of outreach and follow-up, data collection. And then we're seeding product to them and then collecting the content, and then actually taking that content, editing the content, and putting up, content for these brand socials from a lot of this, user generated content, and then maintaining those relationships with those influencers. So we have a whole entire way to like track, maintain, follow up, etc. And are doing that really efficiently. So that's kind of one of the services we're offering. There's a couple other ones we're working on right now, but we never planned to like build an agency. It was like, oh, let's build this for ourselves. This is really cool. And then some of our friends who also have brands were like, oh, that's really cool. Can I pay you for that? And we were like, no, like we're working on other stuff. And then we were like, it wouldn't be that hard to do. And this could provide a lot of cool value. And like, we see the value there because we're doing it for ourselves. So working on some services there. And then kind of through FORIJ and kind of a little bit independently, I got connected with the 7th largest food influencer on TikTok. And he's a good kid. And he really wants to have like his own brand. And I've been like working with him to kind of put together his own brand and his own offering, and just like, hey, like been shedding some light on it for him to show him the models to say, hey, dude, like, you think you just want to go put your product in Walmart. Here's what that would financially cost up front. Are you willing to take that risk? FORIJ isn't going to put those dollars in. I'm not going to put those dollars in. Okay. Do you want to put those dollars in? No. Okay. Then what do you want to do? Should we go raise capital? Do you want to give equity away from the brand? Well, no. Okay. Well then, we need to go through this iterative approach where, we're going to do small limited drops. We're going to determine demand. We're going to determine sort of price elasticity, and then move from there. And that is a much safer route where like, there's a lot less, capital risk. So I've been working on that, and that's been a fun project too. And, kind of plugging in some of the efficiencies of FORIJ.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I've worked with some heavy hitters in the HVAC industry before, and they got these service-based businesses. Some of them start as technicians, and they kind of morph into more of a business owner role. And one of the things that those guys have to get really good at is generating leads, right? Without leads, they can't keep their service techs and their vehicles on the road making money. And some of these guys have gotten so damn good at generating leads that they've spun off and started up marketing companies specific for the HVAC industry, or specific for the plumbing industry. So I kind of get the feeling that you're doing something similar to it with the influencer marketing stuff you got going on. And I think it's pretty cool. So
we'll see it. I also think like me and another founder who's working on some of this service-based project, like we realized like being a founder ourselves and like understanding what these real problems are of these other brand founders or brand owners or people who are in the same positions, like builds in sort of a lead network. And it's real. Like we're not trying to sell to people who aren't trying to buy. Like we know what people are trying to buy because it's us. So that's been helpful as well, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah. Hey, it's similar to what I do as well. It's like, hey, I'm going to sell you something that you need, right? Which is let's call it coaching or membership to the mastermind, or hey, come in and let me show you how we do some back-end operations. And the reason why I can sell to these people without actually selling to them or being that hardcore closer kind of schmuck is because I was once in that seat too. And I needed that information at that time in my life. So I understand the pain points that you're facing right now because I was once there too.
Exactly. It's super valuable. I'd be curious, like for you, does this podcast like shed light on that, or like is it, I'm sure it generates leads, but I would imagine that like really at the core is like it's sort of informational. Like I guess so. I'm 27. I have a business. I'm working on another business, and I feel confident that like having a business coach is a very, very smart move. And I probably still think I know everything, But I was chatting with a friend the other day who this somehow came up, and he's like, I don't get it. He's like, why are like business coaches or career coaches like a thing? Like if they're so good at it, why don't they do it themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's not that they're like better at life than you. It's really an accountability partner, and it's somebody who understands like what you're actually trying to do and how to actually get there. And they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, we both agree this is what you have to do. Okay, you have to do this. And then next week they're going to be like, okay, did you get that done? And if not, how can we get there? And what can I do to help? And what doors can I open? And what can I provide? And I feel like that's a lot of the value.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Third party perspective, compressing time. Hey, you're in a situation. I may not have been in your exact situation, but I was in one that was like 99% accurate or close to it. And this is what I did, and it went completely sideways. And I recommend you don't do that. So I'm literally saving someone time. The third party validation is cool too, because I'm not emotionally attached to the business or the outcome as you are. Your business is not my baby. Your business is your baby. Right. So that's super helpful. And yeah, like there's definitely something that what your friend said that I will buy. The barrier of entry for these two industries is ridiculously low. Okay. The first one is business coaching, and the second one's marketing.
Yeah, true.
You don't need any credentials whatsoever to one day slap some shit on the wall and say, "Oh, I said I'm a business coach," or "Hey, I'm an internet marketer." Awesome. Get in line, bro. But look, man, the track record has to be there, in my opinion. Right? If you're going to hire a coach, they have to have done some real shit in life.
Yep.
Right. And here's a lesson I had to learn too. I was coaching inside of another industry a couple of years ago, and I had clients who were coming in who were making more money than I had ever made in my life. Like some of these people were making more money in 1 year than I had made in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, and the imposter syndrome kicks in. It's like, wait, hold on a second. Like I make good money, and like I am not making anywhere near what that dude is pulling.
Yeah.
Why is that guy coming to me for advice, coaching, mentorship, whatever you want to call it? And it was explained to me by one of them. He's like, look, he goes, I don't care if you made more money than me or not. That's irrelevant. You have already accomplished something in life that I have not yet done. Therefore, I'm going to take your advice on it. I was like, oh, gotcha. Right. So it's not always about, oh, yeah, I made more money than you, or I've done X, Y, and Z. Right. It's like, if you're going to look for that mentorship, you're going to look for that coach, that person to help you out through a situation. My opinion on it is be sure that person has already accomplished whatever it is in life that you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right.
It's wise words. I'm thinking now too, like, so kind of unofficially, but we definitely keep a strict cadence is my mom calls me like her business coach. My mom actually has a real business coach, but my mom uses me to like take some of the exercises that her business coach has her go through to like go through them with her to be like, how does this work? Because my mom's like a born saleswoman. She's in residential real estate. She like sells homes. She fucking loves it.
Yeah.
And but she just like, I think suffers with some of like the structure and understanding, being like, okay, like if I write 1,000 notes, like how many houses could that really be? And it's like, how do you come to that conclusion, or how are you forecasting that? And like getting a structure for her where she can understand, okay, if I want to sell $50 million worth of homes this year, on paper and how the model looks, and from understanding how it's worked historically for me, I need to write 5 notes a week. I need to make 10 phone calls, whatever. And she really likes that structure, but she has a really tough time emotionally attach or removing herself to be like, how does this actually work? Right. So it's cool. Yeah. And my mom's way more badass than me in a lot of ways, but I think it's like, it's just like the external POV and somebody that's gone through it before. Cause I've done it, before for myself. Which is different.
Yeah. Hey, I think that's really cool that you do it with your mom too. And I'm sure there's value that you get out of it too. It's like, okay, cool. The coach assigned something to my mom over here. I'm helping her go through the exercise, but hey, how do I go and apply this to my companies too?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I get to watch how like her business coach interacts and what sort of exercises they're going through. Sort of from that. So I'm certified to administer or to kind of support psychedelic experiences. So I've gone through like certification, and that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but part of actually what I've applied to that when I've worked with people and is some of this coaching stuff that my mom's coach gave her, because I think it's really valuable to like align on some of these things before you're going to go through a psychedelic experience that could be pretty profound. But yeah, it's cool how a lot of that ends up overlapping and informing each other along the way.
Yeah, we find it So with what I do, most people come to me because they're like, oh, my business is fucked. I need help with structure and operations and cool. That's awesome. And that's how we have the sales call. We talk about, oh, what are some of the problems that we're going to help you overcome? What are some of the issues you're facing in your company? Where is some of the structure? Where is some of the lacking of structure in your organization? Okay, cool. Let's set some goals and make sure that these things get implemented over the next course of, I don't know, 6 months or 12 months that we work together. Awesome. But what I don't lead the conversation with, and I'm very open and transparent about this as much as I can be, right? I don't lead the sales conversation with this because everyone's good. Yeah, I'm good, bro. I'm fucking solid. My business may be a little fucked up, but I'm good. When we get behind the scenes and we start having conversations, right? My coaching calls with clients oftentimes start out with like, hey man, how you doing? You good? Well, no, I don't want to hear about the company. I'm asking, are you good? And these conversations, like I'm not a psychotherapist. I never want to be one, nor do I claim to be one. But the conversations have to dip into the personal side of things more often than not. Because if you're having a problem over on the personal side of things, it's going to impact your business in a negative way.
Totally.
So sometimes we have to go in there, and even if it's just me sitting there and listening to you talk about some of the crap you're dealing with right now as another man or as another human, cool, get it out so you can move on. And but the whole point here is like I can't lead a conversation and say, hey man, come on over here. I'm gonna help you unfuck some stuff in your personal life, and with that, your business is gonna get better. Like no one would buy shit from me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
it's also like I feel like it's not a good way to approach that conversation. Like you just need to softly lean into it versus being like, we're going to talk about your personal feelings right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's wild. I had a client last week, dudes from the West Coast, has a real successful business, has a bunch of people working for him. And he was scheduled for his bi-weekly call with me. We hop on a Zoom call for like an hour. And I hit him with out of the Batman, like, you good? And I could just this happens too. The more you work with somebody, the more you can start picking up on it. And that's why I like to do Zoom calls versus a phone call with my clients. Like I get to pick up on the body language from them too.
Yeah.
Right. And I could just tell something was off with the body language. And our call went from like, hey, we were supposed to talk for a good solid hour on how we're going to do some structure. He's looking to do an acquisition of one of his competitors. We were supposed to talk about that. Cool. And we spent 15 minutes talking about that. But the first 45 minutes of the call, I was helping him deal with some shit that he was facing, like mental roadblocks that he was dealing with. He had one guy quit, and the day later he had to go and fire another employee. So now he's down 2 team members. And as the founder, as a business owner, you know this game. If you lose somebody and they're a key person, you're the one who's left holding the bag, and you got to show up and figure out. Not only you have to do your stuff, but you got to do their stuff too. And
it can be super overwhelming.
Yeah.
I was kind of long distance dating this girl this past year, and I always felt like when we FaceTime talked versus just talking on the phone, it was always like way more valuable and like real, because there's also just something of like making eye contact with a person, and you can kind of like there's some sort of relation that occurs that doesn't occur if you're just going to like be on the phone, and it's obviously even better in person, but it was just like sort of, I sort of like saw some overlap into business where I'm like, okay, I never, ever want to have like a really important conversation just like on the phone, because things can be misconstrued. You don't really know how someone's feeling. And so it was just like sort of a takeaway for me personally, from going through that.
Yeah, man, it's real. It's very real. I've had that situation pop up in offices where you go in and you speak to someone who's on your team and you notice something's a little off, and you probe a little bit deeper and you uncover a bigger problem, and you can either, ignore it and let it build up and build up and build up until it explodes, because that's usually what most humans do, or you can get uncomfortable in the moment and address it and hopefully work through it and come to a solution, which is the harder thing to do. And
totally.
It's just the way it is, man. This is the way it is. So what you got next? Like what's next for you? What's the plan with the companies? Like, what are you, you're 27 years old. You have a ton of life in front of you. What are you trying to build? What are you trying to accomplish?
That's a good question. Well, I'll list a couple things on my bucket list. Number 1, I want to be a kindergarten teacher one day. That's on my bucket list. So I don't know, I have a lot of aspirations outside of just like building my own businesses. And we've talked about it. Like, I'm not here to I'm not super financially incentivized.
Yeah.
I'm really incentivized by like life experiences. I like doing different things, and like being a kindergarten teacher is one of them. But I think for the next couple of years, like really want to build a couple items and have a couple, just work streams that like I find a lot of fulfillment from working on and helping people, and like are paying me well, and I'm not answering to a lot of people. And so trying to build that stability in my life to kind of set me up, I think for my 30s to be like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna go get my educational degree and go be a kindergarten teacher for a couple of years. Right. On top of this, because that'd be super fun. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a fair question. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'll be 44 in October.
44. If you could go back and tell your 27-year-old self one thing, what would you tell him? What do you got for me, Thomas?
A lot of things there. So I would work on me a lot sooner than when I started. And when I say work on me, I'm talking all aspects. I'm talking physically, mentally, spiritually, like doing the deep inner work that you need to really heal yourself. You talk about psychedelics, like that's something that I would do at a much earlier age to kind of overcome some roadblocks that I dealt with and faced early childhood, right? Mm-hmm. And not that I had a bad childhood at all, by the way, right? But everyone perceives and receives trauma in different ways. And I would work on that. I would read a lot more than what I actually have now. I went through this period from call it the age of 17. I started working professionally in the car stereo industry, and I was full bore, full steam ahead. I was in it, bro. Like, and that was my focus. I read
like 10 hours a day, like 12 hours a day, just like grinding.
Anything I can get my hands on to consume and read and get myself educated in that field, I did. So it wasn't as if I was not read or uneducated. I just was very focused on that singular thing. Mm-hmm. Where if I had to do it over again, yes, I still would have put some time into that and become the expert in that field. But I would have also put some more time into a broad education for me as an individual. Like start working on some mindset stuff earlier. Start working on some I hate to say the cliche thing, but the self-development, the self-help stuff, because that's really a lot of the stuff that started carrying me further at a very rapid pace. But it didn't start happening until I was 35.
Okay.
Right. So if I had to go back again, number one rule, because I got out of high school at 17 and I stopped reading. I would not stop reading. And I don't care if you read 2 books a year, don't stop reading.
Yeah. Just keep it up.
That's a tremendous piece right there.
Yeah. I go back and forth on the reading sometimes, but like, I feel like I feel anxious if I'm not reading, even like a couple pages, like 2 pages before bed. I'm like, okay, I fucking read a little bit, but yeah, there's definitely real value there. And it's not always like you got to read the nonfiction self-help book. I find a lot of value from like I'm reading, John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, which John Steinbeck, like renowned author from the 40s, 50s, 60s. And it's one of his last books. And he just drives around the US with his dog. Yeah. And I feel like there's just been some great like takeaways for me from that book. And it's just like this cool story of him with his dog. There's nothing profound about it, So
yeah. I've got a lot of really good, valuable insights and lessons and stuff from books like that. Green Lights from Matthew McConaughey was a really good book.
Dude, I really liked that. I really liked that book.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Will Smith's book, I think it's called I Am Will or just Will. I actually listened to the audiobook version of that, and he reads it, and it was unbelievable. I learned so much about that dude's life and some of the things that he's been through from a young age, growing up in Philadelphia to where he is now, and it was just incredible. And he goes through and talks a lot about his career, but he also plays a lot of his music in between the book and kind of shows you the timeline of things happening.
Yeah, like when certain music's being developed. Yep. That's cool. I listened to McConaughey's book on tape, and his voice I was like enthralled by.
It was wild, dude. It's wild. Yeah. He was floating around the country in one of those weird ass vans like you were too.
Sure was, yeah.
Into that microphone he had installed, and that's how
I was listening to it while I was on the road too, which was so cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, dude, this has been cool. Where can people go and find out more about you and some of the products you offer if they want to, go and check FORIJ and see what the food is?
Our website, forij.co, FORIJ.co. I'm super active on LinkedIn. Looks like you're decently active on LinkedIn. That's where to find me. Parker Olson. Got a little mushroom emoji next to my name. Yeah, those are really the 2 spots. But yeah, I love chatting with people. It's super nice to kind of meet. Appreciate you having me on the show. It's been awesome. Like, I emailed you and was like, hey, I've kind of been a lurking fan, and just recently have been started getting invited on podcasts where I'm like, fuck it, I should reach out to podcasts that I think are cool and go tell my story there, because I'd rather do that. So yeah, I appreciate it resonating.
No, that's cool, man. And I think there's a powerful lesson there, and I agree too. About 2 years ago, I'm sitting here at my home office, and I had just gotten done. I read the book, The Talent War. Cool book on actually going and hiring team members, and it's based a lot on special operations principles and how those guys go and actually recruit. And the two authors, one guy's a former Navy SEAL, and the other guy was an officer in the Army for like 20 something years. And they go and they actually started a company, and they do like executive hiring for big positions in companies. And they were given the methodologies that they use and what they've pulled from the military and implemented into the corporate structure. And I was like, dude, this book is awesome. And it resonated with me big time. I pulled a lot of pieces away from it and implemented them in the companies I was working with at the time, and started following these two dudes on Instagram. And one day I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, fuck it. I got nothing to lose. I sent these two dudes a DM. I was like, man, your book was awesome. I learned so much from it. I really appreciate you guys, blah, 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 blah. Sent it. And I'm like, I'll never hear from them.
Yeah.
And like 20 minutes later, phone goes off, and it's both of these dudes. And I'm chatting up in a DM with both these dudes. Fast forward 5 or 6 months later, I get one of the guys who lives in either Austin or Houston, drives up here, comes into the office with me, records a podcast in person. And I was like, this is fucking awesome. So yeah, the lesson there, I think, for both you and for me was sometimes be willing to do something that's uncomfortable and go out there and send the message, because you don't know if the person's ever going to say yes or no. And you only know that it's a no when they tell you no.
Totally.
So I'm all
10 out of 10. Love that. You shoot your shot.
Yeah, shoot your shot big time. Dude, this has been cool.
All right, brother.
On today.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.